I started learning about pranayama, I would say, in my early 20s, and it really introduced me to my energy and showed me how much agency I have over it when I learned to control my breath and use that as a vehicle to access my energy. Generally speaking, being introduced to the subtle energy of the universe through yoga is really, really powerful and gives you a lot of control over your emotions. Your actions start to follow suit, and it really opens up a lot. That's when I started experiencing a lot of personal transformation, is when I started working with my own energy in this way. All right, next category, my personal practice of yoga today. I really like the idea of exploring stillness and balancing the mind through yoga, and I definitely have that practice now. My meditation practice doesn't always look like me sitting still, although sometimes that is part of the practice, part of the dharana, the concentration, but sometimes for me, meditation is accessible through art making. I've been an artist my whole life. I'm a painter and I draw, and really diving into a new piece, sometimes I can get lost in it and I get into the state of mind where a half a day could pass and I wouldn't be the wiser because I'm so lost in the practice, and it feels meditative to me because you are focused. You access it through the practice of dharana, which is concentration, leading into dhyana, which is a state, sort of a flow state of concentration. So when I want to practice stillness, going to art helps me to melt away the noise of the world and just focus on what's right in front of me. My most challenging asana is probably crow pose, kakasana. It's just one that I fall in and out of the same way that I do with headstand. Both of these practices, because they are inversions and arm balances, make you engage your body in an extremely mindful way. You have to really be aware of the distribution of your weight. You have to have a really strong mind to muscle connection, which comes from presence, right? That's a muscle that you train, just like a physical muscle on your body. Presence and concentration are muscles. So those are still some of my most challenging asana, just because it requires so much focus. But I honestly find a lot of difficulty in downward dog as well. Not so much because of the physical side of it, but because of the stillness of that. Especially if I'm taking a class from another teacher, which is rare, and they have us hold it for a long time. It's not that it's physically impossible, but it becomes a challenge for my mind. How do I feel as a yogi abstaining from meat and animal products? This is like, culturally, I was raised to be vegetarian, and I've always just really loved animals, like of all kinds. One of my dreams is to one day run some kind of animal sanctuary, but I don't really think that being vegetarian and practicing yoga are like, I don't think that being vegetarian is a prerequisite for practicing yoga. There are different types of ahimsa, and I know that the killing of an animal falls under a certain type of violence, but there is a lot more layers to it. I think it's culturally, it can be part of someone's heritage and practice, and there is a lot of respect for animal life, even in cultures where meat is eaten. So I'm not really going to say that not eating meat is a prerequisite to practicing yoga. The yoga tradition that I follow, that's a trickier question, because I think that perhaps this person is referring to lineages of yoga, which, it's kind of a tricky question to answer. So I practice Raja Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga for the most part, which has to do with the 8 limbs of yoga. And then physically, I like to practice Hatha or Vinyasa. So Vinyasa, if I have a little bit more energy and I want to practice breath and movement. Hatha, if I'm looking for a little bit more stillness. My thoughts on different formats of modern yoga. Bikram yoga is really popular in America and the West, primarily because one of its key functions and purposes is to manufacture specific temperatures and conditions under which things like flexibility are a little bit more sort of supported. I think because of these manufactured conditions, high stress on the body, and the sort of dangerous setup that primes people for injury, one, because you're sweaty and your body can be slipping and sliding, and also because it creates a competitive atmosphere where mentally you're sort of stepping out of your body and focusing more on external validation. And there's also this like questionable cult-like following, which I never subscribe to any kind of like just blindly follow one person or one methodology. That's just not who I am, personally speaking. There's also some controversy around Bikram yoga that I think just further proves the point that if you kind of just blindly follow something without questioning things or using your own critical thinking and judgment and discernment, it's not the best. So personally speaking, I'm good. When it comes to Kundalini Yoga, it is absolutely rooted in something that is genuine and true and comes from the source, which is Kundalini energy, or the Shakti, feminine energy, ungendered. And it's also used in reference in things like Raja Yoga and even Tantra. Modern Kundalini culture, however, is a little bit strange. Again, having this sort of cult-like following, where now we mostly see it dominated by people outside of the source culture who are changing major parts of their identity in order to be perceived a certain way. It just feels strange and off to me and feels like cultural sort of whitewashing. So my thoughts on it are that I'm going to access and practice it through Raja Yoga, but I don't really get involved in that specific industry. Okay, how to start a yoga practice if you're a beginner. I actually have a whole podcast episode about this, so I definitely recommend listening to that because it gives you a step-by-step guide on how to get your feet wet. If you are starting yoga for the first time, start simple. Incorporate small practices that you can have it stack onto your existing day and your existing routines. Don't try to change your life overnight. That's never gonna work. Things like practicing stillness when you have a break rather than reaching for your phone. Learning sun salutations and practicing just that for the first few months. Finding a yoga philosophy book like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and just learning a couple pages a day. Small things like this will take you a really long way when you are creating the foundations of your practice and setting yourself up for the rest of your life. A lot of people who jump straight into like hot yoga, studio memberships, they start getting sucked into the marketing side of things where they feel like they need all the clothes, the gear, the outfits, the culture, they need to go to the classes, the memberships, like all of that is just going to empty your wallet and fill your head with comparative nonsense. Just focus on your own practice. Start by adding 1, 2, 3 things in max for the first 6 months and then build from there. Considerations when practicing asana. Things like injury, your bodily ability, pregnancy, and menstruation, among many other things, definitely constitute a varied approach to practicing asana, as they should. Asana is not a one-size-fits-all, and even the fact of using things like modifications or variations sometimes can insinuate that there is only one way to practice something in its true form and everything else is just like some kind of passing form of it, but that's not really true. The aim of posture ultimately is to bring our mind and body into stillness to prepare us for meditation. So whether you do that by sitting on a chair or using a prop or doing it on the mat with your body, all of that's the same. As long as you get to the end result, you're going to achieve what you're meant to achieve through practicing asana. Now, when it comes to practicing yoga on, in states like when you're on your period, for example, I'm not an expert. I'm not a medically trained expert on this, but in my culture, it's been said that it's not the best to be super active and under physical strain when you're on your period because your body's already exerting so much energy and you're a little bit more tired. It's not the best to use what little energy reserves you have to go exert yourself when you want to be conserving the energy. And of course, this is going to vary on a person-to-person basis. Some people will naturally have more energy. Some people will have less. Some people will feel the same. It all has to do with how you feel. So you have to take your own body into consideration. And that may even change from period to period. So in addition to your energy being lower, if you are overexerting yourself physically, you might hurt yourself if you're not using your best form or if you're tired. Also functionally, it's sometimes recommended not to practice inversions because the dominant energy in your body is going to be the downward energy, that type of prana, which is the downward sort of emptying energy. And if you're practicing inversions, it's said that sometimes can interfere with that energy. So typically what I like to do when I'm on my period is practice postures that support things that are happening in that moment. Typically for me, my lower back will hurt a lot if I'm on my period, so I will do postures like Balasana, child's pose, or Sukhasana, or bound angle pose, Baddha Konasana, because those things stretch and elongate my spine and take some relief, or give me some relief. If you're ever asking someone for help when it comes to yoga for medical conditions or specific things, when it has to do with your body and physiology, yoga teachers are not trained on that. There's like a small module on anatomy, and that is so surface level. Who you should be asking is a yoga therapist. Yoga therapists are trained on anatomy, physiology, and sort of medical necessity, and they can blend all of those things together to prescribe a course of therapy for you when it comes to yoga that will best support you. I am not yet trained on that, so take everything with a grain of salt. Okay, the next question is a postural tutorial of how to get from downward dog to high lunge. I can definitely make a video about this on my Instagram or on my social media, but just kind of thinking through it now, coming from down dog, you can lift one leg into Ekapada, Adho Mukha Svanasana, just one-legged downward dog. Sweep the leg through to a Anjaneyasana, low Anjaneyasana with your knee on the floor, and then lift up into Ardha Chandrasana or high lunge. That's one way of getting there. Next question is, how do we decolonize yoga and respect the roots? This is going to have a different answer based on who you are, if you're from the source culture versus if you're not from the source culture. So if you're from the source culture, I would say study the texts, go back to our culture, like talk to your elders, talk to other people in the community who have practiced this, who incorporate it in different aspects of their life. If you're religious or spiritual, go look into those customs and try to understand how yoga intersects with them. Also, if you're from the source culture, but most of your practice still consists of things like hot yoga, you're still supporting certain brands that don't support DE&I, or if you feel like you are cosplaying in the yoga industry by just adopting the westernized sort of visual of what it looks like, start there. Peel it back, come back to the roots, maybe stop practicing hot yoga. I know oh my gosh, I know this is such a controversial thing to say, but don't practice it. If you want to work out, go do a workout. Asana is not there to make you sweat. That's my 2 cents. And if you're not from the source culture, start by centering teachers who are from the source culture. It benefits you, it benefits them, it benefits the lineage. It's good all around. Stop giving your money to chain studios when there are so many locally owned studios that you could be supporting instead. Study the source text yourself rather than deferring or waiting for some